Language is a significant way of knowing. It has helped cultivate and shape the world that we live in today. It has also helped develop all the fields of study, considering if we couldn't utilize knowledge to communicate our ideas, effectively we'd be left with the same behavior for millennia, without any advancement from shared knowledge. Language can hinder or help our understanding. Though it is easy to demonstrate that language is an important way of communicating knowledge, it is often overlooked as a tool in which to acquire it. Different languages have many different expressions or vocabulary that do not have correlations in other languages. For example, Inuit people have a multitude of different words for snow. These concepts are deeply ingrained in their mind, their culture, their way of life, and there is no way for a speaker of another language to attempt to translate these concepts without circumlocution. And again, they probably can only be slightly grasped, but a deep land, cultural, and language three-way connection could not be established. Many speakers of languages such as Japanese and Korean note that you cannot fully grasp the understanding of a culture, way of life, and meaning of words unless you have been raised in this language from the beginning of your life. Therefore, different cultures have different specialized knowledges adapted to their surroundings, which is both held in and transmitted through knowledge. How do we use language? Well, we utilize language to describe our subjective perceptions of the world. Language helps us to communicate with other people if they speak the same language. It allows us to share our knowledge and our experiences so that there can be an accumulated wealth of knowledge within our culture. Language occasionally helps us to understand other people's concepts and perceptions. It is used in media and advertising. For instance, language can be manipulated to exaggerate a news story. Certain types of language is selected to appeal to target audiences. This is evident in media and advertising. For instance, to appeal to children, basic words are utilized or there is wordplay to receive attention from this audience. Problems with language. Language can be ambiguous. For instance, some words have more than one meaning, and language is always altering and developing. For instance, there are dead languages, which used to be exceedingly popular before, for example, Latin, and new slangs are created every couple years. Additionally, each country has their own sayings or slangs that other people generally don't understand. For instance, in New Zealand, choice means cool, whereas in other countries, choice generally means an act of choosing between two or more possibilities. Words can be vague, thereby can be misleading to the person listening or reading the words. The use of words that a person chooses can completely change the meaning that is being conveyed.
So, what are more problems of using language? Irony can bewilder some people, as a word can be used to mean the opposite of what it actually means. For instance, any more clever ideas, Einstein? In this quote, the person could generally mean that he or she comes up with intellectual ideas. On the other hand, the person could be mocking he or she for suggesting unintelligent ideas. Another problem with language is language in translations. The problem of using literature to gain knowledge about other cultures, for instance, reading a novel that has been translated to English, is that it's not easy in translations to preserve exactly the same meaning in all things. For instance, the Catholic Church in medieval times banned translations of Holy Scriptures out of one idiom into another, since it's not easy in translations to preserve exactly the same meaning in all things. The next topic I'll talk about is equivocation. This is the use of ambiguous language to conceal the truth or to avoid committing oneself. This can be used by politicians when they don't want to answer a question truthfully. For instance, Hillary Clinton tends to prevaricate when journalists ask pointed questions. The next topic our group will talk about is gender pronouns. Some people feel as if they don't fit into a category of she or he, or maybe they feel that they are a mixture of both. There could be no words for them, or perhaps they like to use the pronoun they or them. There are also non-specific gender pronouns, such as ze and here. However, I think that we don't need gender-specific language. Furthermore, what is the point of speech? If you rephrase something, it becomes acceptable, the idea doesn't change, you just agree with the way it's said. For instance, if you say please, thank you, or sorry, more people will forgive or help you, whereas if you make demands, they are likely to ignore you. Another example is when you say assisted suicide or assisted dying. Assisted suicide applies to tragedy, despair, and more people are likely to avoid using this way of saying it. Assisted dying is a much more attractive, acceptable way to put it. Studies have also shown that people accept gay marriage when you rephrase it to marriage equality, as this sounds more accepting as it takes away the words that conservatives don't like, which is gay. Language can also be manipulated by politicians to make the concept seem more reasonable and appealing. For instance, some Republicans call the poor people takers to make the rich consider that they use your money to get free welfare. Another example is when Republicans say energy exploration instead of simply what it is, which is drilling for oil. They avoid using these words as it sounds harmful for the public, as oil is a limiting resource already. In contrast, energy exploration creates a positive image as it sounds like it's better for mankind and the world exploration brings excitement. These examples manifest the effect of language, as you can make terrible sounding ideas sound good if you phrase it correctly, then you accept it. This is commonly used in marketing. Furthermore, elaborating on language used in media, you should avoid overused buzzwords and cliches. Marketers love to use words such as leading, solutions, and ecosystem. These words are empty, meaningless, and used so often they've lost whatever punch they may have once had. Overused metaphors can also be boring. According to a study featured in the New York Times, the way the brain handles metaphors has also received extensive study. Some scientists have contended that figures of speech like a rough day are so familiar that they are treated simply as words and no more. Brain scans are revealing that when people hear a detailed description, an evocative metaphor, or an emotional exchange between characters, different areas of the brain are stimulated. Just hearing the smell of lavender activates the part of the brain involved in smell. When subjects in their laboratory read a metaphor involving texture, the sensory cortex responsible for perceiving texture through touch became active. Metaphors like the singer had a velvet voice and he had leathery hands rouse the sensory cortex. When you tell a story, by all means, use metaphors, analogies, and vivid language, but eliminate cliches, buzzwords, and jargon. Your audience will tune out phrases they've heard a million times. Language can correlate with religion. For example, in early AD, the Roman Catholic Church dramatically gained power and influence over ancient Rome. With Latin as the Church's preferred language, it too became the language of the empire, which at its height was estimated to cover roughly a quarter of the Earth's population. To put that into perspective, the same percentage of the human population speaks English today. Today, Latin might not be extinct, which would mean it has no living speakers, but it is certainly dead, as it has fallen out of use of method of communication. However, Romanian, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, and French have Latin roots, tenses, and grammar. This is not surprising, since all of these countries were made up of the Western Roman Empire. It was only around the fall of the empire that Latin died and these new languages were born.